one. So welcome everybody to today's, what shall we call this? Just the wrap-up or half wrap-up of an event that happened today in New Jersey. And my name is Mark Finnern, and with me I have Barbara. Hello. And what event was this today?
Today was the second day of the Metacurrency Collabathon, where we are inviting all sorts of people to come in and collaborate for a 3-day long event around the Metacurrency project. And
which you are heading to, yes?
I am facilitating the event, and I am one of the founders of the Metacurrency project, yes.
Who's the second founder?
Eric Harris-Brown, who's lurking in the wings over here.
Okay. First question to you is, how come that you spend time on metacurrency?
Because I believe that our current systems of sharing value are inadequate. That we have an economy that's not only based on scarcity, but optimized to continue scarcity, and to fundamentally the way it operates is unsustainable as well, and we don't have the right feedback loops even in it for better decision making.
Before we go to that level, let's start at the bottom. For most people, currency equals money, equals dollars or other currencies throughout. And we have here a diagram, and you more or less that was the entry point yesterday evening, and it's wealth, a living system model.
Yes.
And for me, coming here also just very, very interested in our currency, or well, money as so central in our life right now, and what does it mean and all that. So can you make that explanation from money to currency to living wealth?
Yes. First of all, the disclaimer is necessary that I'm not using the word currency in sort of the everyday English sense where it does equal the same thing as money. We're trying to reclaim the word currency as something a little bit broader and grander because of its roots. It comes from the root currere, the Latin to run or to flow. Mm-hmm. So it's about currents. Mm-hmm. And we're referring to currency really as the thing that the symbol systems that we create, right, so that we can manage currents of value, flows of value. And money is one type of those, right? Helping facilitate exchanges of goods and services, but there's other types of value flows.
And in this big picture, the money part of that wealth and is down here, correct?
Yes.
Very, very small part.
Yes.
And then even what I love is you put a little card on it, speculative wealth. It falls even out of it. You want to cut it out, actually.
Right.
Love that. So money and tradable wealth is down here, but you see that the much bigger picture, and everybody please follow us in that regard. It's current. What I really like yesterday evening, where you're saying current-C. That is how we want to see it, more or less. The ability
to see currents or flows.
Flow.
Yes.
Very, very powerful, I think, as a metaphor. And also the other metaphor that I didn't, I think Douglas Rushkoff was talking about. We are living in a world where, in comparison, if you would wake up one day and every computer had Windows 95, similar world we are living at the moment. All we know is dollars, or the local currency in the world. And what we hope from that tape here is to open your eyes to other possibilities and have a new viewpoint on, well, what is out there and what is missing by just having that money value and having exchange.
Yes. Well, not only do we create a kind of artificial scarcity or poverty for ourselves by creating artificial scarcity with our monetary system,
Right.
but even with the capacity of our monetary system for what it can measure,
Right.
what you can see, what flows of value, what currents it can see,
Right.
end up just being a tiny little corner of this. Like one way to think about it, to make it personal, is if you think about all the value that you have as a human,
Right.
all of the potential, all of the creativity, all of the capacities, all the expression, all the passion, all of that type of stuff.
Big.
Then big.
Right.
But then there's what your job gets from you.
And
The
what you
capacity
get
that they have to
paid for.
extract, exactly, the capacity that your employer has to extract specific value from you that they pay you for.
Right.
Little tiny corner of who you are.
Right.
Right? But that is similar to the whole thing, right? To all of living systems, to our natural systems, to our environment, to our communities. We're just tapped into a tiny part of a much larger flow of values.
So the wealth of a living system model is encompassing all living, breathing systems, or at least tries to model and see the flow.
Yes. In fact, I would go back to your first question of why do I spend time on the Metacurrency project, and for me, what that's about is developing our capacity as humans to speak the language of living systems again, to nourish living systems, to participate as a part, not just a minor extracting resources, but actually as a dynamic part of living systems. And when I say living systems, this isn't just about green or sustainability. A corporation is a living system. And we're not necessarily even good at sustaining those.
Yeah.
I mean,
Look at the top 100 companies 100 years ago. How
Right.
many are left now?
right,
I think not even 10%.
right.
Can we quickly go to the different levels?
Yes.
As much as we can quickly.
Yeah, let me connect back to one point though, still about the living systems and why currency and flow is what we're concerned with, is that a living system is alive by virtue of its flows.
Yeah.
If I were to interrupt any of your vital flows for an
Right.
appropriate period of time, your respiration,
Right.
your circulation, your digestion, any of those types of things, you stop being alive. You stop
Yeah.
being what we consider a living system. You're still participating in an ecosystem. You begin decomposing, and it's like you're still part of a living system there, but not the kind of living system we call a human. And one of the problems that we have by only being able to see the parts and products level of systems,
Right.
where we can trade and separate parts or products of those systems, is that we become blind to what actually makes a living system alive. What is the lifeblood of a company or a corporation or of a community or of the ecosystem,
Right.
or of this farm, or right? And so we end up with communities that have the parts or products of what we think a community looks like, right? It has homes, it has people, it has roads,
But
But-
no connection.
it's a corpse of a community.
Right.
Just like you could have a human that has all the parts, but if the flows aren't happening, it isn't a human.
Right.
And we are incapable of seeing the difference because we're only looking at the parts.
Yeah.
And so what this is about is making that difference be able to be visible,
Okay.
and have us be able to interact at every one of these levels that we need to be able to interact with to nourish living systems instead of only this one.
Okay.
Should we go through those?
Yes, please.
So every living system has these different dimensions or layers or levels. The parts or products of a living system. So in this case, parts or products of you might be body parts or the blood that you produce. You can donate a kidney, you can donate blood. Those are separable from you as a system.
Right.
Some of them are not.
The second kidney,
it's
not
good,
so much.
Right, but it's good to know the difference.
Right.
It's good to know because that actually has to do with another layer that we haven't gotten to yet about the relationships between
Right.
the systems and the parts and that kind of stuff. So a little bit more about this level. Parts and products, because they can be separable,
Right.
that's also things that are divisible. It's kind of like pounds of beef
Right.
distinct from cows,
Right.
right? You can have a half a pound of beef. You can't really have a half a cow and still
Yeah.
have cow.
And with that, we are already in the second level, right? Because
Right.
the cow is then the property of the system.
Well, the cow would be the full system.
Full
and the
range.
cow has certain properties.
Right.
In what we currently manage around cows. That's the food delivery.
Food is coming. Good Thai food, by the way. So the cow has all the properties, or certain properties the cow has, like living.
Sure. You have to answer that. Should we?
We can cut that out, but
Great.
Press the buzzer for like 3 seconds. Hopefully, if we're ready
someone's
for
getting
the
down and
answer from
getting the good food. And later on you will be able to smell it, because this is special.
Through the video. Smell-o-vision. Smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision. So, okay, back to the cow. Cow has properties as in is alive.
Yes.
What else?
Well, some of the ones that we are currently concerned with about cows are, for example,
Mad cow.
mad cow disease. Are they infected with mad cow disease? Are they grass-fed, or are they grain-fed? Is the milk organic, or
Right.
are chemicals used in the production? Is it hormone-free? Or these are properties
Okay.
of the system. You can't subdivide it. You can't say, well, the cow's half hormone-free,
Yep.
right? I mean, neither the cow's hormone-free or not, and
But then properties give a different value for the parts than later.
right. So that's a way of
Down the line.
exactly, that's a way of seeing value that's embedded in this part of the system, even though you can't trade the hormone freeness of the cow
Right.
any more than, like, you could donate blood, but you only have one blood type,
Yeah.
right? So your blood is in divisible units, your blood type is in a whole unit, and you can't trade your blood type. We can't
Right.
exchange blood types.
Okay.
The blood that you donate is of that type. So
Yeah.
it affects the value of the
Yep.
parts or products, right? But it isn't the same as the parts or products.
Next one. Next one.
Next level, performance of systems. So in this case, it could be the productivity of the cow, the milk output, or your ability to run a mile, or the ability of a team to collaborate, or to be adaptive or inventive or innovative. So
Vitality we have here.
yeah, so it may be harder to see on the camera, some of these fainter written ones, but scarcity, which is what we've kind of come to model all of economics around, is only applicable at this level. You never have a scarcity of properties of systems. Systems have all the properties they need. And then when you get into performance of systems, the flavor that you're dealing with there is the vitality of the system. And then as we move out to the next layer, relationships between systems,
Right.
the flavor of that is about identity, being able to identify what the
Okay.
parts are, and connectivity, see how they're connected or related.
Uh-huh.
And I want to just mention these things here. We mentioned tradable wealth
Yes.
at the very beginning, and you also mentioned speculative wealth, which
Down
is
with it.
exactly, well, the funny thing is that sort of what has happened with the dynamics of making everything fungible
Right.
and interchangeable is we now have moved more and more toward gambling.
Define fungible for the non-native
Sorry, fungible
English speakers like me.
basically means sort of divisible and of interchangeable parts, and like a dollar is fungible because it's the same as any other dollar.
Right.
You can subdivide it into parts, and you can, right? So
The 4 quarters.
4 quarters and right. And so the problem is that we begin to relate to the world through that lens, and we treat a pound of beef if it's the same as any pound of beef, and that kind of thing. The problem is if you remove a pound of beef from a cow, you broke the cow. Exactly.
Okay.
And when we start treating everything as fungible, we start breaking the system integrity at these deeper levels. Because
and at the moment we don't see it because we only measure down here.
Right.
All the rest invisible.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you mentioned measuring. There's different types of measurement appropriate at these different levels.
Right.
So rational numbers that divide into parts can be set in ratios are appropriate at this level, like
Right.
dollars being subdivided into quarters and pennies and charging interest and having fractions of cents. And properties of systems are really appropriate to be measured in whole units. It's not to say that
I have 10 cows.
you have 10 cows, you have one blood type, you have, right, it's, so they're countable wholes generally. Performance of systems
It's rankable.
is rankable. It's just like when you think about performance of an athlete, what we do is we run them on the same track, on the same day, against each other, and then we say first, second, third.
Magical mile. Or what is it called? Under 4 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Run a mile under 4 minutes. What is it
Right.
called? Will come back to me. All right. Rankable.
But an
Yes.
example of a currency that we use at this level are Olympic gold medals.
Yeah.
Right? So or Olympic medals, gold, silver, bronze. That's a way of recognizing the athlete. It doesn't mean you ran the mile in 3 minutes and 52 seconds. It doesn't mean that. It means you ran the mile fastest
That day.
of that day of the people who had qualified to be in the race
Right.
with you. Then at relationships between systems, this is the realm of nameable wealth.
Okay.
And that naming carries inside of it the relationships and meaning that are part of the whole identity and connectivity, the relationships between systems. So an example here, well, I gave examples earlier of saying things like certified organic or grass-fed or free range. Those are ways of creating a currency so that you can see a current, a
Right.
flow in the production process, knowing
Okay.
that it was chemical free or hormone free or those types of things.
So the end result of that relationship between systems is properties? Not
It affects,
necessarily,
well,
but-
just like the properties affect the products,
Okay.
everything ripples out in this direction,
Okay.
right? You change the relationships, and you of course change the properties.
Okay.
And so, yes, if the relationship, you change the relationship between the cow and the food that it gets,
Right.
you
And then-
just change the property from being grass-fed to grain-fed.
Therefore, then
Then you change the
higher or lower value.
right.
Interesting. And then evolutionary capacity of systems.
Evolutionary capacity of systems.
Big words.
Yeah, this deals with the system's capacity to change properties at these other levels, change characteristics at these other levels,
Okay.
right? So, an example, if we were going with the donate blood type, sort of blood pressure, cardiovascular health. If we
Right.
look at that for a human,
Right.
and we get out here to the evolutionary capacity of systems, the fact that we can invent a pacemaker and insert a pacemaker in a human, or do a heart transplant, or if we
Grow organs. Yes.
or grow organs potentially, or those types of things, those aren't the parts that you were born with.
Yeah.
Your capacity to change those parts is part of the evolutionary capacity to adapt and change. Your capacity to change your properties, to change your performance,
Okay.
to change the relationship between systems,
Okay.
that's actually a part of changing the system behavior.
Right.
And so again, everything ripples through this direction. Now, it ripples through this direction, and it's a feedback loop. So you change the parts, and yes, you're changing. Right. It's not a linear causality. It's a feedback loop. So the changes ripple through
That's
all the
the-
layers.
The living part of the
Exactly.
system model. Interesting. Did we miss anything from the whole system?
Well, there's one thing that's kind of worth mentioning, I think, which is the evolutionary capacity of systems is correlated to the system's capacity to deal with information.
Right.
Right? We, as humans with big brains, have analyzed things about our bodies and the electrical pulses involved with our hearts such that we can design a pacemaker to regulate those pulses, right? So that has to do with an informational capacity that allows us to build something, right? So one of the things that we're seeing is as our information handling capacity increases, the speed of evolution increases, the rate of adaptation and change increases, because we now start changing things at all these different levels. So I think it's just worth saying change is accelerating exponentially because our information handling capacity is accelerating exponentially. And so if you're questioning like how quickly we have to adapt to things like this living system model, how quickly might things change, I'm saying very quickly.
It is.
Because almost as quickly as we can see them, they start changing how we interact, which is the whole point of currencies. Being able to make value and things that we care about visible at these different levels. And as soon as something becomes visible to you, you interact with it in new ways.
And there's also something that happened to me more or less coming to the event and just thinking about metacurrency. I had a little bit different view on it, and that opened up my brain, my viewpoint to, oh wow, this is the idea space more or less. So thanks for thinking all that through. One of the things that I was, or where you finished with that thought, one of the things that I originally thought about was, and there we come then to implementing new wealth tracking systems that are encompassing all of that, was metacurrency. So for me it was like you create the underlying layer of currency, of exchange, and enable different groups, different people to create their own currency in their environment, and also with the different viewpoint on the world. So the libertarians create a different currency system versus the socialists, or which I think is not a good putting people into these boxes, but let's say that. And then they create their own system, and then the power of evolution, as in selection, and so they would compete, these currency systems, against each other, and the best one would win at the end, where the most of this is more or less reflected, and we as humans have agreed on that, and that. So my thinking was, what your goal is to create the underlying platform to create many currencies that then most of them will die off, but just a couple will be so much faster than our current system in that failing and then succeeding. So was I totally off, or what's your thinking?
Well, I think I look at that landscape differently. That it's like an ecosystem needs diversity. Right? You have many different types of value, different niches being filled, different roles, different things being fulfilled in an ecosystem. It's not like one species wins. In fact, it kind of can't be unless that species can do everything, including eat itself. Right? Like you, you actually have to have that diversity. And I think that diversity, that richness, that understanding that there are different niches that need to be targeted for interacting with value in different ways according to different rules is missing from our monetary landscape. So if we have our say, it's not about one new winner, that a new winner emerges, or even a few new winners emerge, but it's about we make it as easy for you to create new ways of recognizing value as it is for you to create a new sentence. Because it is a new value sentence.
Wow. And that's on more or less on that granular level. You hope to reach that.
Certainly, on that level for you.
Right.
Now, what we also want to enable is groups of any size. Could be a small handful of neighbors. Could be a neighborhood, a church, a virtual organization, a nation, a planet. Being able to also operate things on that scale, because it's a software platform that allows things to scale. So it wouldn't necessarily, creating a new currency wouldn't be as easy then as you making that sentence. It would actually have to do with agreements changing and being able to embody those changed agreements about what we value in a currency.
Right.
And that's, for me, one of the really subtle things that we miss is that every currency embodies particular values by what it chooses to measure and what it chooses not to measure.
Especially what it chooses not to measure.
Especially what it chooses not to measure, which is most everything.
So where are we with a system that is better at measuring these things and visualizing?
Well, we've been in the process of building the underlying protocols and patterns to enable this, and been rolling them into software, and we are just now releasing a prototype. It's not even like fully functional for end users yet. It still kind of have to be a little geeky, but of communication tools that use these protocols. To allow people to communicate through channels that they currently communicate, email, Twitter, RSS, chat, those kinds of things, but be able to pull them together and create new kinds of communications, new structured statements, which can look like statements of value and currencies, or they can just look like a normal email. But the fact is that this platform has the capacity to do both. So what that starts to do is increase our capacity to speak a new sentence that creates new value.
And that's amazing overview that you gave. If someone is interested in more, where can she find more information?
Metacurrency.org is a good place to start.
And what do you find there?
Go ahead and say.
New Currency Frontiers?
Yeah, newcurrencyfrontiers.com. Also blog.newcurrencyfrontiers.com. My personal website, artbrock.com, has a bunch of the presentations that I've been doing around this, including much sexier versions of this image. Not the hand-drawn version.
Oh, we love that. Okay. And at least I saw today on that metacurrency.org you have a map with which is like showing the currency both sides and where you can click into and correct. What's it called again?
Right, there is. If you go to metacurrency.org/currency map, there is a decision tree that has I haven't counted them, about 600 different decision points involved in designing a currency, the decisions that you would make in designing a currency that would make, let me make this a little more practical. We use currencies all the time, we just fail to recognize that they're currencies. So a college degree
is a currency.
Is a reputation currency, right? It reputes that you have achieved a certain body of learning.
Right.
And we need tools like that. Not saying that one necessarily, but that one is useful in the business world, for example, to understand who has achieved what types of body of knowledge. It's a kind of credential. Every kind of credential, by the way, is a currency. Certified organic. Because remember, we go back to a currency is a symbol system for shaping, enabling, or measuring currents. A credential measures a current of some type, right?
And so that decision tree of currency, if you go there, you can more or less.
It's an interactive Java thing because there's so many nodes. You can click on different ones to open them up and be able to see, if you're interested in designing your own currency, some of the decisions that you may be confronted with about the design of your currency, because it's a rich and complex system,
Right.
just like creating a sentence
Right.
is a rich and complex thing. There's many, many words I could choose from. There's many ways I could structure it. There's a lot of subtleties involved, and the meaning that gets carried is different. Just like the value that gets embodied in the currency is different.
And but it helps you to then create your own currency or reputation systems. Helps you go along this tree to open your mind to. You are not so sure regarding reputation system.
I'm not sure. No, the reputation system, it's fine for that as well. I'm just not sure that somebody new to it would find it very helpful.
Okay.
I think they would find it overwhelming.
Maybe it's just me that loves these kind of trees.
If you're a geek, seriously, if you have programming experience, you have a geek, you like to see all the options, all the possible adjustments on the knobs and dials, then it could be helpful.
Okay.
But if you're looking more like to reimagine the process,
Right.
I'd recommend the flow space brainstorming worksheet.
Okay.
Just Google flow space brainstorming, and that actually walks you through some very different ways of thinking about value flows and how that may be possible to structure. And then go back to the currency map and look at how you might adjust those knobs and dials.
Sounds excellent. Thanks, Art, for this great introduction. And yeah, metacurrency.org.